There are 3 words. Just 3. And when an older woman uses them at the right moment, something shifts in an avoidant man that he cannot explain. He doesn't know why he suddenly leans in. He doesn't know why he starts texting back faster. He doesn't know why he feels something he hasn't felt in years. But you're about to know exactly why. And once you understand this, you will never approach an avoidant the same way again. Most women have been doing the complete opposite of what actually works. And it has been costing them everything. Stay with me because what I'm about to share is going to sound almost too simple. And that's exactly why it works. Before we go further, drop the word ready in the comments right now if you want to attract without chasing. Drop it. Because the people who engage in the first 60 seconds of this video are always the ones who get the most out of it. Now let's talk about what's really happening inside the mind of an avoidant. Because you cannot use any strategy, any words, any approach without first understanding the psychology that drives this person. And most people skip this part. They jump straight to the tactics. They want the script. They want the magic phrase. But if you don't understand the wiring behind avoidant attachment, the words mean nothing. The words are just words. Context is everything. An avoidant person grew up learning that needing people was dangerous. Not dangerous in a dramatic movie kind of way. Dangerous in a quiet, invisible, soul-crushing kind of way. Maybe their emotional needs were ignored. Maybe when they reached out for comfort, the response was cold. Maybe they were told to stop being so sensitive, to toughen up, to handle it themselves. So they did. They built walls, not because they don't feel, they feel deeply, but because feeling deeply and then having those feelings dismissed over and over again is a particular kind of pain that the mind learns to protect itself from. So the avoidant creates distance, not because they don't want connection, they desperately want connection. But their nervous system has learned that closeness leads to pain. And so every time someone gets too close, the alarm goes off. Pull back, create space, disappear, and then feel guilty about disappearing, but also feel relieved. That push and pull is not manipulation. It is survival. It is an old nervous system doing what it was trained to do decades before you ever came into the picture. Now here is where older women have a distinct advantage. And I want you to really sit with this, because it is the foundation of everything. An older woman who has done even a fraction of her inner work brings something to the table that is genuinely rare in the world of human connection. She is not desperate in the way that triggers an avoidance alarm system. She has lived enough life to know that her worth is not determined by whether someone chooses her today. She has been through things. She has survived things. She has rebuilt herself more than once. And that energy, that quiet, grounded, unshakable sense of self, is the most magnetic thing an avoidant person can encounter. Because the avoidant is used to people who need them too much, who text too much, who ask too many questions, who need constant reassurance that the relationship is okay. And every time that happens, the avoidant retreats further. But when they meet someone who genuinely doesn't need them to function, who isn't going to fall apart if they go quiet for a few days, who has a full life that does not revolve around them, something unexpected happens. The avoidant gets curious, and curiosity is the crack in the wall. Now I want to be clear about something before we get to the 3 words. These words are not manipulation tactics. They are not tricks. They are not ways to trap someone or to get someone to love you who is fundamentally incompatible with you. What they are is a way of communicating that actually lands with the avoidant nervous system, a way of speaking that doesn't trigger the alarm, a way of connecting that feels safe instead of suffocating. And safety is everything to an avoidant. Not the word safety, but the felt sense of it. The actual experience of being around someone and feeling like their walls don't have to be up. That is what you are creating. And these 3 words, used in the right context, with the right energy behind them, do exactly that. Let's start with the first word. The first word is interesting. This sounds almost laughably simple. And I know you might be sitting there thinking, that's it? That's one of the 3 words? Yes. And here's why it is so powerful when used correctly. When an avoidant shares something, and they do share things, just not everything, not all at once, not with their whole chest, They share things carefully and tentatively. They are watching your reaction. They are scanning for judgment. They are waiting for you to make a face, to over-respond, to suddenly turn the conversation into a therapy session, to project your own feelings onto what they just said, or to immediately offer advice they didn't ask for. Many of those responses confirm what they already believe, which is that sharing is not safe. But when you respond with, "That's interesting," something different happens. You are not closing the conversation. You are not opening it too wide. You are holding a space right in the middle. You are saying, "I heard you. What you said has value, and I'm not going anywhere. But I'm also not going to make this weird." The word interesting creates what psychologists call a low-stakes environment. There is no pressure in interesting. There is no demand in interesting. There is just a simple, calm acknowledgement that what they said matters. And then you stop. You don't follow it up with 20 questions. You don't say, "That's interesting. Tell me more. How does that make you feel? Where do you think that comes from? Have you ever talked to anyone about that?" No. You say, "That's interesting," and you let the silence breathe. And the avoidant, who is used to either silence being cold or conversation being suffocating, experiences something completely new. A warm silence. A comfortable pause. And in that pause, they often say more than they plan to. This is the paradox of attracting an avoidant. The less you pull, the more they come toward you. Older women who have lived enough life understand this instinctively. They've stopped trying to force every conversation into a deep emotional excavation. They know that depth comes when it's ready. They're not in a hurry, and that patience, that ease, that genuine sense of, "You don't have to perform for me right now," is what the avoidant feels when you simply say, "That's interesting," and mean it. Now let's talk about how to mean it. Because you can say interesting in a way that feels passive-aggressive. You can say it in a way that sounds sarcastic. You can say it in a way that communicates, "I have no idea what to say to you right now, so I'm buying time." The avoidant will feel all of that. They are extraordinarily perceptive to emotional subtext. This is one of the great misunderstandings about avoidant people. People think they are emotionally closed off and therefore unaware. The opposite is true. They are hyper-aware of emotional undercurrents precisely because they had to be growing up. Reading the room wasn't a social skill for them. It was a survival skill. So when you say, "That's interesting," it has to come from a genuine place. From a place of actually finding them interesting. From a place of being genuinely curious without needing to extract anything from them. From a place of security, not strategy. And this is why this approach works so much better for older women than for younger women who are still in the anxious stage of needing reassurance from the relationship. An older woman who is genuinely secure in herself says, "That's interesting," and means it. She really does find this person fascinating. And they feel that. And they lean in. Now the second word, and this one is going to surprise you. The second word is fine. Not fine as in, "I'm fine," when you're not fine. Not that loaded, weaponized use of the word that everyone on the internet has made jokes about for years. Fine as in, "That's fine with me." Fine as in, "I understand, and I'm okay." Fine as in, genuine acceptance without guilt, without the silent treatment, without a side of emotional punishment. Here's the situation where this word does its most powerful work. An avoidant needs to cancel plans. An avoidant goes quiet for a few days. An avoidant says they need some space. And the woman, who is anxiously attached, responds with something that sounds like this. "Okay, I understand. I just hope you know that I was really looking forward to this. I've been having a hard week, and I was kind of counting on seeing you, but it's okay. I'll figure something out. I just wish you had told me sooner." Every single sentence in that response is a hook. A gentle hook, but a hook. And the avoidant feels every one of them. And they feel trapped. And they retreat further. Not because they don't care, but because caring and then feeling responsible for managing another person's cis emotions is exactly what their nervous system cannot handle. It is the thing that first taught them that closeness was dangerous. Someone depended on them emotionally, and it was too much. But when the secure older woman responds with a genuine, warm, uncontrolled, "That's fine," something completely different happens in the avoidance nervous system. The alarm doesn't go off. The trap doesn't close. The wall doesn't go up. Instead, there is a moment of what can only be described as emotional confusion in the best possible sense. The avoidant thinks, wait, she's not upset? She's not punishing me? She's not going to spend the next 3 days being cold until I apologize? She actually means it? And in that moment of confusion, curiosity enters again, because the avoidant has almost never experienced this. They've experienced people saying, it's fine, when it very clearly isn't. They've experienced the quiet punishment that follows. They've experienced the emotional debt that gets added to an invisible ledger. And so they've learned that fine almost always means not fine. But an older woman who genuinely has a full life, who genuinely has other things to do, who genuinely is not devastated by a canceled plan because her emotional well-being is not riding on. This one evening, she says fine, and she means it. She picks up her book. She calls her friend. She goes to the thing she would have enjoyed anyway. And the avoidant notices this. Maybe not consciously, but they notice it. And what they notice is that this woman does not need me to manage her emotions. I don't have to perform stability for her. I don't have to apologize my way back into her good graces. She actually trusts herself enough to be okay without me. And that makes me want to be around her more. This is the counterintuitive nature of attracting someone with avoidant attachment. The less you need them, the more they want to give. Not because they're playing games, but because their nervous system finally feels like it can breathe. Now I need to address something important here. Using fine only works if you actually are working toward being fine. If you're saying fine through gritted teeth while white-knuckling your phone waiting for them to feel guilty, they will feel that. The word will come out with an energy that broadcasts what it's really covering, and the avoidant will retreat because they'll feel the manipulation underneath the surface. This is not about learning to perform security. This is about building it. And for older women, this is the work that has often already begun. The divorces, the heartbreaks, the moments of sitting with yourself in the quiet and realizing you survived, the therapy, the hard conversations with yourself in the mirror, the friendships that sustained you when nothing else did. All of that is the foundation of genuine self-sufficiency, not as a wall, but as a ground. That ground is what the avoidant feels when you say fine and mean it. And it is one of the most attractive things they will ever encounter. Now the third word, and this one ties everything together. The third word is go. As in, go ahead. As in, go, I'll be here. As in, the implicit message that you are not going to chase. You are not going to cling. You are not going to make their need for space into a referendum on your worth. Avoidant people test for this constantly, not always intentionally, but they do things that create moments where you can either chase or release. And they are watching, every time, to see which one you choose. Because the chaser confirms every fear they have about closeness. The chaser says, you can't have your own space in this relationship. The chaser says, your needs for distance are a problem that I will fix by pursuing harder. And the avoidant bolts, every time. But when you use the energy of go, when you genuinely release them without punishment, without dramatic exits, without the silent treatment or the performative independence or the obvious jealousy, something remarkable happens. The avoidant goes. They take their space, and then they come back. Not always quickly. Not always smoothly, but they come back because the thing that usually makes them run never materialized. The trap never closed. And when they come back a little more open, a little more curious, a little more trusting, because they have evidence now that you mean what you say, that your security is real, that being with you doesn't mean giving up the air they need to breathe. Go is also about your own power. When you let someone go without panic, you demonstrate to yourself and to them that you are capable of standing in your own life without them as the center of it. And that is the single most attractive quality any person can bring to a connection with an avoidant. Now I want to talk about what holds these three words together, because words without understanding are just sounds, and understanding without embodiment is just information. What makes these three words work is the energy underneath them. And that energy is grounded security. Grounded security is not playing hard to get. It is not withholding. It is not pretending you don't care. It is the genuine, settled sense of knowing that your life has value and your love has value and that your time has value regardless of whether this particular person sees that today. It is the quiet confidence that comes from having been through hard things and having come out the other side with yourself intact. It is the ability to want someone without needing them to survive, to be drawn to someone without being controlled by that drawing. And this is where older women who have done their work have such a profound advantage. Not because they're older, age alone means nothing, but because the particular kind of growth that often comes with having lived, with having built and lost and rebuilt, with having had your heart broken and having chosen to still love yourself afterward, that growth produces exactly the energy that the avoidant finds irresistible. The avoidant has spent their whole life surrounded by people who needed something from them, who wanted them to be the source of their security, who made their happiness contingent on the avoidant's behavior. And every one of those experiences confirmed that closeness was dangerous and exhausting. But when they encounter someone who genuinely does not need them in that way, who genuinely holds herself as complete, something ancient and hopeful in the avoidant stirs. Maybe this one is different. Maybe this one I can actually trust. Maybe this one won't swallow me whole. And they move toward her. Now let's talk about what you do when they move toward you. Because this is where many women make the mistake that undoes all the progress. When the avoidant finally starts coming closer, starts initiating, starts texting first, starts suggesting plans, the natural impulse is to rush toward them with everything you've been holding back. All the warmth, all the affection, all the need that you've been sitting with. You want to pour it out. And when you do, the avoidant spooks. This is not about playing it cool. It is about understanding the rhythm of an avoidance approach. It is like a wild animal coming to eat from your hand for the first time. Every sudden movement, every loud sound, every sharp change in energy sends them back to the tree line. But if you stay still, if you stay warm without being overwhelming, if you receive what they offer without immediately demanding more, they take another step. And then another. The receiving is as important as the releasing. Receive warmly, receive genuinely, but don't weaponize their approach into a demand for more. Don't say, great, now that you're reaching out more, let's define what we are. Don't say, I'm glad you texted, I've been waiting to talk about where this is going. Let the moment be what it is. Let the connection breathe. And here is something that I want you to really absorb. Attracting an avoidant is not the same as keeping an avoidant. And keeping an avoidant who has not done their own work is a particular kind of exhausting that no strategy can make sustainable. What these three words do, what this entire approach does, is it creates the conditions under which an avoidant can choose to grow, can choose to show up, can choose to let someone in. But they have to make that choice. You cannot make it for them. You can only make it possible. And part of your own work is knowing the difference between someone who is avoidant and moving toward healing and someone who is avoidant and using the architecture of your patience as a place to hide indefinitely. An avoidant who is doing their work will show you, slowly and imperfectly, movement toward you. They will slip and retreat and return. But the trend, across time, will be toward more openness, more consistency, more presence. If the trend is always the same distance, always the same walls, always the same hot and cold with no deepening ever happening, that is information you deserve to receive and act on. You are not a holding pattern. You are a destination. And the older woman who has done her work knows this. She knows her time is valuable. She knows that her love is not a consolation prize. She knows that being chosen inconsistently is not the same as being chosen. And that knowledge, that bone-deep understanding of her own worth, is the fourth invisible element that makes the three words work. Without it, the words are tactics. With it, they are truth. Let's not talk for a moment about the mistakes that sabotage everything, even when the words are right. Because these are so common and so understandable. The first mistake is using the words while internally panicking. You say, that's interesting, but you go. We're scanning his face desperately for signs of connection. You say that's fine, but you're furiously composing the text you wish you could send. You say go, but you're watching the door. The avoidant feels this. They always feel this. Not because they're cruel, but because they are tuned to exactly this frequency. Emotional subtext is their native language. The solution is not to get better at hiding your anxiety. The solution is to genuinely do the internal work that reduces the anxiety. To build a life that doesn't have a avoidant-shaped hole in the middle of it. To invest in friendships, interests, purpose, health, the things that make you genuinely okay on a Tuesday evening when he hasn't texted. Not performance. Reality. The second mistake is consistency without limits. Being consistently secure does not mean accepting consistently poor behavior. It does not mean that because you are grounded and spacious and don't overreact, you also become a person who accepts anything. Standards and security go together. In fact, it is the security that allows you to hold the standards without drama. You don't need to make a scene. You don't need to issue ultimatums with venom. You simply, clearly, calmly communicate what works for you and what doesn't. And if what they offer consistently doesn't work for you, you exercise the most powerful version of go, available. You let them go from your life. That capacity, the genuine capacity to release what isn't working without spiraling into despair, is perhaps the most advanced expression of everything these three words represent. The third mistake is expecting a linear path. Attracting and connecting with an avoidant person is not a straight line. It is a winding path with setbacks and silence, and moments where you wonder if any of this is working. The consistency of your own inner state matters more than any single interaction. One great conversation doesn't cement anything. One concerning silence doesn't destroy anything. What matters is the overall pattern, yours and theirs, over time. Older women often understand this more naturally. They've lived enough life to know that things worth having are rarely won in a single moment. They have perspective, and perspective is a form of power that youth rarely possesses. Now let's go a level deeper. Because beneath all of this, beneath the words and the energy and the strategy of non-pursuit, there is a question that every woman dealing with an avoidant eventually has to ask herself. Why do I want this person specifically? Not because wanting an avoidant is wrong, not because the connection isn't real, but because understanding your own attraction is part of the work. Sometimes women who are anxiously attached are drawn to avoidant people because the chase activates something familiar. The intermittent reinforcement, the hot and cold, the chase and retreat. It can feel like love when it is actually anxiety. Not because the feelings aren't genuine. They are. But the intensity of the feelings is sometimes coming more from the uncertainty than from the actual quality of the connection. This is important to examine without judgment, because if your attraction to this particular avoidant person is partly fueled by the anxiety of not having them, then the three words, the security, the grounded release, they serve double duty. They not only create the conditions for the avoidant to approach, they also help you regulate your own nervous system. They help you move out of the anxious activation that has been mistaken for passion. And in doing so, they help you see the relationship more clearly, which is always a gift, even when what you see requires hard decisions. The woman who uses these three words from a place of genuine security doesn't just attract the avoidant. She changes the entire quality of her own experience of the connection. She stops being a hostage to his inconsistency. She starts being an active participant in her own story. And that shift, from hostage to author, is one of the most profound transformations available to anyone in any relationship dynamic. Let's talk about communication style more broadly, because these three words don't exist in isolation. They are part of a whole way of showing up that the avoidant finds safe and magnetic. Older women who attract avoidance tend to speak with a particular kind of directness that is devoid of manipulation. Not blunt, not aggressive, warm and direct. When something bothers them, they name it simply, not with a preamble of 3 paragraphs setting up the emotional context, not with 20 qualifications designed to soften the blow, just clearly and quietly. I noticed I didn't hear from you. I felt a bit off about that. Not an accusation, not a demand, just a truth, offered simply and then set down. Avoidants, paradoxically, respond better to direct communication than to emotional processing marathons. Not because they're emotionally avoidant in all areas, but because lengthy emotional conversations feel like a trap they might not be able to get out of. A simple, clean statement of truth gives them room to respond without feeling cornered. And the avoidant who is given room to respond often does respond. Carefully, imperfectly, but genuinely. The older woman who says, "I would have liked to hear from you sooner," and then moves on, without making it a referendum on the entire relationship, without using it as evidence of his unavailability, without adding it to the growing list of grievances, she is doing something extraordinary. She is communicating and then releasing, saying what's true and then not weaponizing it. And the avoidant, who is used to every small misstep becoming a case being built against them, experiences something like relief. That relief is deeply attractive. Now let's talk about the long game. Because if you're interested in someone with avoidant attachment, you are, whether you like it or not, playing the long game. There is no rush. There is no shortcut. There is no magic three-word sentence that is going to unlock the avoidant in the span of a single conversation and turn them into the fully present, emotionally available partner you're hoping for. What these words do is open doors. Slowly, quietly, consistently, they create the conditions over time under which an avoidant person can begin to associate closeness with safety rather than danger. That rewiring does not happen in a week or a month. For some people, it takes years of consistent, secure connection to begin to shift deeply held patterns. And here is the question that matters most. Are you willing to give that time? Not out of desperation, not because you can't imagine your life without this person, but because you genuinely enjoy them, genuinely see something worth building with, and genuinely have a life rich enough that waiting for them to grow is not the same as putting your life on hold. If the answer to that question is yes, then you are in the right place with the right tools. If the answer is, I'm giving all my time and energy to this person, and I'm getting barely anything back, and I don't know how much longer I can do this, then the most important thing you can do is not learn how to attract them more skillfully. It is to take an honest inventory of what this connection is costing you versus what it is giving. You deserve a love that grows, not one that perpetually stays just out of reach. The three words, interesting, fine, go, are not about reducing yourself to get someone who is emotionally unavailable to choose you. They are about expressing the fullness of a woman who knows herself. A woman who finds people genuinely interesting without needing them to be a project. A woman who is genuinely okay because she has built a life that holds her. A woman who can release what is not hers to hold without falling apart. That woman does not need to learn these words. She already speaks them naturally, because they come from who she is, not from what she's trying to get. And that is the deepest truth in all of this. The most powerful version of attraction does not come from what you say or do to make someone want you. It comes from who you are when you have stopped trying to make someone want you. It comes from the quiet, unmistakable, bone-deep sense of a woman who belongs to herself first. An avoidant man, with all his walls and all his complexity, with all the childhood wounds that taught him that closeness was dangerous, can feel that woman across a room. He doesn't always know what he's feeling. He doesn't have words for it, but something in him settles when she's near. Something in him thinks, this one is different. This one I might be safe with. And then, in his own time, in his own way, slowly and imperfectly and tentatively, he turns toward her. Not because she said the right thing, but because she was the right thing. That's where we're going. That's what all of this is building. Not a trick, not a technique, a self. A whole, grounded, interesting, secure, genuinely fine, with or without you self. And when you are that self, the words come naturally. The energy comes naturally. The attraction comes naturally. You stop performing security and you start living it. You stop performing peace and you start inhabiting it. You stop saying fine as a strategy and you start saying it as a fact. And the avoidant, who has spent his whole life running from people who needed too much, stops running. Because you're not asking him to give you something you can't give yourself. You're inviting him into a life that is already full. And there is nothing in the world more attractive to a person who has spent their life afraid of being needed too much than a person who doesn't need them at all, but genuinely, freely, with their whole grounded self, chooses to want them anyway. That's the gift. That's what these 3 words, in the hands of a woman who means them, actually do. They don't trap the avoidant. They free him from the fear, from the walls, from the belief that connection always costs him more than he can afford. And maybe, in freeing him, they free you too. From the chase, from the anxiety, from the endless wondering, from the question of whether you are enough. You are enough. You have always been enough. And the 3 words are simply the language through which that truth finally gets heard by the person who needed to hear it most.